So, hello everyone. Welcome to Los Angeles. What a great city. So, I have the pleasure of introducing three of the finest gentlemen in our city, and they clearly need no introduction. But they have been major forces of change in our city, and for that, we thank you. Wayne Ratkovich. Wayne is the founder and president and CEO of the Ratkovich Company, a development firm that has solid roots in Los Angeles, both downtown and beyond. I could go on and on about Wayne and his transformative projects throughout Southern California, but I think you need to see them for yourself. If you get a chance, you must go up to Flower and 7th and see the block, a major transformation. This project is in the heart of downtown and will transform a 40-year-old famous but dowdy urban landmark into open, lively, urban, transit-oriented, human-scale gathering place where new experiences are shared and connections born. A future urban mixed-use project that will serve as an example for communities across the country and around the world. Thank you, Wayne. Bob Lowe. As founder and chairman of the board of Lowe Enterprise, Bob has also made his mark on Southern California and beyond. Bob started his company with a vision of building a multidisciplinary real estate organization with the depth to prosper through any real estate cycle, and that's not easy. And he's never looked back. From LA to Washington State to Washington, D.C., and every place between, Bob has been a leader in quality projects in the residential, commercial, resort, and mixed-use markets. He believes in downtown, being a pioneer in residential development in the Arts District, and understands that LA is also beyond downtown. He recently broke ground on the Ivy Station, a game-changing project in Culver City that will include mixed use and, most importantly, transit-oriented development. Thank you, Bob. Ted Tanner. We would not be here today if it were not for the vision of Ted and AEG. The changes you have seen from 2005 to 2011 to today would probably not have happened if it wasn't for the vision of Anschutz Entertainment Group and the leadership of Ted Tanner. Building on the lessons they have learned around the world, they have taken what was a pretty desolate spot in downtown, separating the convention center and our business district, and helped connect all the dots. They are truly a major driver in everything you see downtown today. And thank you, Ted. Thanks. So I think I'll sit with you guys. So let's start out with LA, the city of suburbs. We took downtown and created probably the largest office park in the United States, because we're boomers, and boomers believe in boundaries. And so we said, we have to work here, but we can't live here. We have to live out in the suburbs, and we have to play over here. But now, the millennial, they hate boundaries. Let's remove these boundaries. Let's make a boundaryless world. But the three of you have always seen ahead, and you've been big drivers in mixed use. So what makes LA such a special city, and why did you come and do what you did here? Bob?
Thank you, Rob. They tell me the fancy mic on my head isn't working, so I have the old-fashioned kind. When we started our company in the early 1970s, the Los Angeles business climate was dominated by large public companies in the banking industry, petroleum, aircraft, defense. Today, it's much different. The LA business community is led by more entrepreneurial firms, active in all kinds of businesses: entertainment, education, technology, trade, tourism, services. The list goes on and on. We will talk about, in the short time we have here this morning, about the key drivers that have converted downtown LA into a 24-hour city. Such things as new entertainment and cultural venues, the rapidly expanding urban transportation system, new hotels, new residential, both new structures and converting old stylish office buildings. And of course, the new demand from the younger citizens of our city. But while this renaissance was going on, the center of activity moved first from the Bunker Hill financial district to this area, South Park, LA Live, and now moving further east and back north to the Arts District. But it's also interesting to note, while the downtown LA area was reviving, the established city center suburbs also continued to prosper. Areas like Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, Century City, Pasadena, Irvine were thriving at the same time, and in fact, still, in most cases, getting higher rents and higher absorption. With all these changes in Southern California and the challenges that come with it, it makes Southern California an exciting place to do business. I guess that's why we still call it home.
Great, thank you, Bob. So Wayne, you just love taxes, or why is it that you've done so well in Los Angeles?
Well, Robert, sometimes you look ahead by looking backwards as well. And if you step back for a moment and look at, say, the first 50 years of the last century, from 1900 to 1950, downtown Los Angeles was the center of all of Southern California. Mm-hmm. In 1900, there was only 100,000 people living in the entire city. Today, there's 4 million. But in that 50-year period, in spite of 2 world wars and a depression, downtown Los Angeles was the center of Southern California. It was the government center, it was the financial center, the legal center, the retail center, the largest retail store west of the Mississippi with a 1 million square foot May Company store. Building is still there. It was the entertainment capital of the world, which nobody really pays much attention to. Movies were made in Hollywood, but they were shown on Broadway. There are 12 theaters, and they're still there on Broadway, and that's where movies were shown. So downtown became the entertainment center as well in so many ways. But then after the Second World War, things changed pretty dramatically, and for the next 50 years, we flew to the suburbs. And we built the freeways, and we took off, and we didn't invent the suburbs. New Yorkers and Connecticut folks did that, but we took it to a new level.
Right.
Those were the Ozzie and Harriet days when everybody lived in the suburbs with a barbecue and a swimming pool and 2 kids. And that worked pretty well until the population grew. As I said, the city's at 4 million, the county at 10 million, the region at 20 million. So we're starting to urbanize. And what happened in the latter part of that second 50 years was Ted Tanner and Phil Hanschutz came to town. Asian capital came to town. Major architects did work in downtown Los Angeles, and things began to change, and they changed dramatically. And I don't think there's any force more powerful than the Anschutz Entertainment Group in terms of demonstrating what can happen downtown in Los Angeles. So hats off to Ted and his group for doing that. We're on a roll now with literally thousands of residential units under construction, hundreds, if not thousands, of hotel rooms underway. So there's plenty going on.
That's great. So
If you have a complaint, take it to Ted.
There seems to be a theme here. Ted came to town. So Ted, why'd you come to town?
Well, it really started in, AEG was formed about 17 years ago. A number of years after our owner, Mr. Phil Anschutz, bought the LA Kings and convinced Dr. Jerry Buss, owner of the Lakers at the time, to come to downtown in a new arena. We were extremely bullish on the opportunity to build a new arena in downtown. We saw LA as a vast, expanding, diverse market, one that had a huge appetite for music and sports and live entertainment, but was greatly underserved with older, obsolete sports and entertainment venues. And we had city leadership who thought that, gee, if we could build a new arena, maybe we could clean up the blight and unsafe conditions around the convention center, which was expanded in the early 90s. But we looked at an opportunity that was well beyond building a great new arena in downtown. And we were afforded a chance to build a large mixed-use entertainment district that really no one had done before. And we saw this as an opportunity to lift the underperforming convention center, to really transform the neighborhood to the east and South Park in terms of the stalled residential development that had been started by the CRA in the 70s and 80s, and really to transform all of downtown. And yes, we made a very big bet. It took us 10 years from when we got our entitlements in 2001 to finish what you see today at LA Live. But it has been, and was then, I think, a transformative process for us. We invested billions of dollars, weathered the worst economic recession of our times. We were literally breaking ground underneath the hotel when the markets collapsed around us and people looked at us and said, "What are you doing? Why are you still building?" But today we continue to look for opportunities to expand our hotel with over 750 additional keys, to work with the city of Los Angeles to modernize and expand the convention center projects that you're helping us and at Gensler, Rob, looking for better ways to connect our campus with the USC Expo through the MyFig project, and also to better integrate LA Live into the downtown fabric with the LA Streetcar Initiative and the short urban corridor that we call the Avenue of Angels. We've also been fortunate to have been able to take what we've learned in Los Angeles and adapt that model to other cities, namely in Europe. In London, in the East Side, the former Millennium Dome, we have developed an arena and an entertainment district that just celebrated its 10th anniversary. And we're continuing to build and add now another 300,000 square feet to finish what we started there. In Berlin, Germany, similarly, we acquired 35 acres, have built a new arena, and are now building a massive mixed-use entertainment district that we hope to complete in the fall of next year. And it will absolutely transform an abandoned rail yard in the eastern part of the city. And finally, we're looking at opportunities in smaller mid-tier cities where we can take this idea and scale it down, where opportunities are not as significant as in the major cities that I've just described. And we're actively working in master planning a 5.5-acre site in Nashville, Tennessee that we're very excited about.
Well, I had the pleasure in the summer going to Berlin with Ted, and it's amazing what this project has done for that city. And I can promise you, each and every one of you need AEG in your city. And we're thrilled that you're not done. I just hope the business climate here will keep you involved and keep you going. You still good for a couple more rounds?
You bet.
Good. We're counting on you, Ted. We're counting on you. All right, Wayne, the man, the myth, the legend. I think what's great is no one cares about sort of urban life and what goes on in the city. But Wayne has managed for years to see projects that everyone else saw and said, nah, can't do it. And somehow you see this shining jewel in the middle of these projects. You find things like Howard Hughes' office and the Spruce Goose Hangar down at Playa Vista. And when nobody thought it had any value, and actually I will tell one story, in the Howard Hughes office building, they were actually giving a tour. And this wasn't Wayne, this was someone else. They were giving a tenant a tour of the property, and they looked back and they said, "Where did the tenant go?" And he fell through the floor. The place was that old and that dilapidated. So everyone assumed it had no value. But Wayne grabbed that property and made something very, very special out of it. And then the Will Turn and Chapman Market, and it goes on. So how do you see this, Wayne? How do you find these jewels?
First of all, the guy who fell through the floor was James Cameron's assistant, right-hand man. The guy who did, the movie producer. That was an interesting experience. Rob, I think there's probably a couple of answers. It scares me sometimes when people say, when you buy real estate nobody else wants. It scares me a little bit. On the other hand, that they have presented opportunities for us. And I think it's probably for a couple of reasons. One is we stay pretty close to home. We don't go far out of our immediate boundaries. So we feel like we've got a really comfortable grasp of the marketplace. The second thing is all about economics. And if we can buy something at a price that's low enough, we believe that with the talent that comes from design and marketing, we can make honey out of something that's less than honey. And I think that's pretty much the way we do it. We bought those Howard Hughes buildings in West Los Angeles, 28 acres of land and 475,000 feet of buildings for $60 a square foot. So low enough that we said, we can make this work. We'll make it work. I'm not sure how, but we think we can figure it out. So that's probably my best answer for you.
Well, and you've certainly made it work, and Google has now taken over the Spruce Goose Hangar, and we're not allowed to see it. But at some point when we do, because I snuck in, it's amazing.
It is amazing. And the other thing I guess I would add to that, we had an experience early on with a historic building. We didn't know it was going to be a historic building, the Oviatt building in downtown Los Angeles. And it suddenly dawned on us that instead of opposing historic designation, we embraced it. We used it as a marketing tool. And we were amazed at how powerful that was. And when it came to the Hughes properties, everybody who came there wanted to know where Howard Hughes' office was and where Howard Hughes did this and where Howard Hughes did that. So history really is a powerful marketing opportunity.
Yeah, that's actually great. So thank you. So Bob, had a great weekend a couple weeks ago with you with the Chamber Board down at Terranea. You've got some wonderful properties along the coast. But particularly the Ivy Station is real interesting because Culver City is an up-and-coming market. You made a very large bet there. But what's great, and I want to hear more about, this is a transit-oriented property. And I think for Los Angeles, we all understand we need to get out of these cars, and we need more developers with the vision to take on transportation. So tell us a little bit about Ivy Station.
Well, we try and follow demand as the first rule. And it's clear particularly the younger age group is looking for the kind of lifestyle that you find in mixed-use developments. So that's kind of our motivation, one. Two, as the transportation system in Los Angeles expands, it's creating nodes of opportunity that are really crying out for mixed use. Culver City is a good example. Culver City, a West Side community, had already become a 24-hour place where people were living and working. And when the opportunity came to acquire 6 acres right at the Metro Rail station of the line that goes from downtown LA to the Santa Monica Pier, it was an opportunity too great to pass up. The project responds to the demand. It has office, rental, multifamily housing, retail, and a boutique hotel. But we've followed the mixed use demand tied to transportation in all of our recent projects around the country. San Diego, where we're building on a light rail system, a mixed use project. Our project in the Arts District, mixed use project, is within walking distance of the rail line. Our downtown Oakland project is within walking distance of BART. The last two projects we finished in Washington, D.C., both a multifamily housing project and office project, both were at Metro rail stations. So it's clearly the time is right.
That's great. So you mentioned the Arts District. And for those of you that may not know, it's east of downtown Los Angeles. It is sort of LA's version of Chelsea. And so it's really come a long way. First to you, Bob, why are you taking bets there? And second to you, Wayne, there's got to be a lot of jewels down there that you've got to go find. And Ted, let's get some entertainment. So let's talk a little bit about what do you see going on in the Arts District, and when will we get tech downtown?
Get what?
Tech companies, the more creatives.
Well, we have Warner Films,
Right.
that are moving to the Arts District. I think that is the first major step for the entertainment industry with tech coming to the Arts District. And I think that will continue. I can't say we were super farsighted to build our first project there. We try not to be first, but we love being second. And we were kind of that way in the housing district in the Arts District. But we're now planning a new office building, but it will be a funky new office building. It will look like an old building inside. And we think the combination of a new building looking like an old building has the right timing now for the Arts District.
Good.
Well, Rob, I think the success of the Arts District has been remarkable. If you find a building that's for sale down there today, it is in the range of $300 or $400 or $500, even $500 a square foot of leasable area. The rental rates have gotten higher in the Arts District than they are in the heart of the Central Business District in some cases. So it is a hot market, and because prices have moved so dramatically, it doesn't present as many opportunities as we'd like to see. We'd love to be there.
Yeah. And Ted, with LA Live, you really brought entertainment downtown. So do you see office product in your future for entertainment companies? I know you have some broadcast facilities. What do you think about that for LA Live?
Well, we have a significant office presence there now. We continue to grow. That's our headquarters. It's the global headquarters for Herbalife. ESPN, Disney have major broadcast facilities there. We definitely see an opportunity for office space. Oddly, when we were originally entitled for the LA Sports and Entertainment District, we had a very heavy office entitlement.
Right.
And we were able to convert a lot of that to residential, and much of the residential development you see today is through an equivalency matrix that converted office space to maybe 7 or 8 times the amount of FAR for residential development. So we were able to grow our entitlement pie, so to speak, by almost 80% as a result of that. But I sit on the board of SCI-Arc, getting back to the Arts District, and 5 years ago we were struggling to find places for students to live, 500 undergrad and graduate students going to the school there, and now that problem does not exist. There's more housing, and some of it is attractive and affordable because it's so close to those students that we don't have that issue anymore. With regard to entertainment in that area, I think we're going to stick to our core at LA Live. We're going to look to grow that as much as we can, continue to see if we can improve the convention center and make that perform at a higher level. We've been operating that now for 4 years, and have last year realized about $10 million in operating profits. So we see a great future for this area.
Great, great, great. So it's interesting, for those of you that aren't from Los Angeles, downtown LA has 500,000 people who work here, and we're up to about 65 or 70,000 that live here. So we grew by almost 10 times in the daytime. We wondered why we had a traffic issue, and it's because we're moving too many people too far. But if you look around us, those aren't office towers with all these cranes. That's residential being built. But it's interesting, if you go look at the names on those residential towers of who's investing in them and who's building them, they're not the typical LA developer. So there's a lot of foreign money that we all see. A lot of it, actually the largest amount is Canadian, but there's also a lot of Asian money, and clearly right across the street as you came in here, a huge project for Oceanwide. So the question is, one, what do you think about all this in foreign investment? And then the second question is it matching the market, or are they just banking money? I've heard condominiums referred to as vertical safety deposit boxes. So give us a little bit of insight what you guys see about with that going on downtown.
I'm happy to lead off. First, on the positive side, the Asian Canadian capital that's come to Los Angeles is helping the city revitalize the downtown area. But either they have a little more optimism about the absorption of high-end housing, or they're calculating to a different rate of return than we do. I think that there's going to be an oversupply. It will take a few years to absorb at the higher end these units.
Absolutely.
So we'll see whether they're right or whether my concerns are right.
Right.
I would share that concern. When you have as much capital coming into a marketplace as we do right now, you got to look at it and say, what is motivating it? And interestingly enough, it seems that some of the Asian capital, at least, is not motivated by the things that Ted and Bob and I have to look for, which is a rate of return, which is a profitable outcome. The EB-5 program is essentially selling residency. And so you can invest in these projects and acquire residency in the United States. That's the motivation. And when you have so much of that coming into a marketplace, you do away with the normal disciplines that are part of a marketplace. And as developers, we are ordinarily not very disciplined to begin with. So when you add another element to it, I think you'd have the concern that there could be significant oversupply.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that, and frankly, I think we counted about 16 towers above 30 stories, all of which were residential. It's pretty scary in terms of the oversupply that Bob mentioned, and I think what we fear the most is that these units won't be occupied. They won't be delivering the population, won't be delivering the footfall that we're so anxious to see more of.
Right.
At LA Live and throughout downtown. I mean, that's what gives our city the street life, gives hope to the retailers on the ground floors of all these buildings to create a thriving downtown. So yeah, I think it's going to take years to absorb this very upscale overbuild of condominiums, but I think we're most fearful that they'll sit mostly empty.
You know, it's going to be interesting, Rob, to find out. You always like to look at these buildings at nighttime to see how many lights are on.
Yep.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to see how many lights are really on.
Yeah, we don't need 100% sold, but 100% empty. Right? We need the footfall.
Yeah.
So listen, we had a really great dinner last night. Roy March was honored, and he really gave a great speech. And I think we would be remiss to talk about Los Angeles if we didn't talk about homeless. We've got the Olympics coming in 11 years. We passed Measure HHH, for 10 years to hopefully take care of this issue. The county passed Measure H for services. So can we tackle this problem, and what are we going to do? Because I think we all agree, and Roy couldn't have been better about how do we live so well and do so well and not do something about this issue. So, Bob, you're in the hot seat.
What's the answer, Bob?
Let me see. Let me get it out of my pocket. Unfortunately, the basic problem of homelessness, in my opinion, is the deterioration of the American family. And the development community cannot solve that problem. We can respond to the immediate issue of housing. I think the new government-oriented programs in California and LA County are positive, but they alone, in my opinion, cannot solve the problem. We need to make it easier for the private sector to build housing in California. We have not kept pace with the growth of demand in housing in any year since 2008. So what do? We look at CEQA. Our environmental laws in California have great purpose in mind, but they have provided a opportunity for lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit that slows down development and makes it far more expensive. So we have to tackle not only bringing money in to build housing at the very low end, we have to tackle the issue of what's making it too difficult for the private sector to build housing in the state of California.
Thank you, Bob.
Bob is dead right. Our politicians do a wonderful job of creating all sorts of laws that limit the amount of housing at a time when we have a housing crisis. So I don't know if they're ever going to fix that. But my answer, Rob, or my thought is I'd rely on the private sector to implement the housing. We've got a terrible condition in this city. Almost every city has a terrible condition. We've got to do something about it. The money is now there. The question is, who is going to implement that? And one thing I hope that we don't do in Los Angeles is have a redundancy of effort. We need to concentrate it. United Way is very involved. The Central City Association is very involved. And if we can tie the private sector into this, and the design profession, we need design help to figure out how to house these people in an efficient way. So there's a solution to it if the government will allow these initiatives to take place. And there is a precedent for it. I was involved in one. We helped build a downtown women's center years ago, and we did it privately. It was funded privately, it was built privately, everything was provided privately, and it worked pretty darn well.
Right. Well, we've created a linkage fee so that we're going to add tax on additional development, which is only going to make market rate housing more expensive, which is going to make it more difficult for people to get into the market, which is going to increase the problem.
Yep.
So very concerned. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think Wayne's absolutely right, and Bob as well. I mean, this is going to take all sectors. Clearly, the private sector has to lead this, I believe. But we need comprehensive solutions that can bring all the social services, the mental health care, job and employment opportunities, job training, to get these homeless people assimilated back into urban life. And it's going to take all of us and a lot of hard work to get there.
We also have to experiment with new technologies, new ideas to provide housing at the lower end at more affordable pricing.
Right.
I'm a small investor in a little project that's experimenting with converting containers to houses and trying to lower the cost of the door from an average cost of $450,000 in California to more like $150,000. So we'll see whether that works.
Good. So in the paper, I think it was last week, the California DMV said within 1 year they were going to accept fully autonomous vehicles. Yet, I'll take a poke at the brokers. The brokerage community is still pushing us for 6 cars per 1,000 because of the tech companies. And the problem is, a project takes us in California with the entitlement process 5 years. So the issue is going to be, what are we going to do with all this parking that we're putting in for today's demand, delivering tomorrow, when no one owns a car? So what are we going to do, guys?
Hopefully we can be smarter about it, maybe build the parking so that it can convert to future living or office arrangements. We've noticed, and we've built a lot of parking at LA Live, that our parking demand seems to be decreasing, even though a lot of the surface lots around us are being developed. People are finding other ways to get around. The shared ride, transit are delivering great options for people that don't want to get in their car and drive and have to park. So I hope we can find solutions that will not only eliminate these large parking podiums that I think are pretty horrible on the urban landscape, and come up with either more efficient ways to park or get tenants and lenders and developers all together to accept a much lower parking ratio.
Good, good, good.
Yeah, Ted, I agree. It's probably sensible today to pay more money to build your parking structures so they have flat floors and more floor-to-ceiling space,
Right.
so that they're more easily converted to other uses when we don't need them for parking.
So I had a developer friend who proposed to the city, and the project hasn't been approved yet, that he would allocate about $1.5 million a year for Uber vouchers, and figured that was cheaper than building this parking that was only going to be good for a couple of years. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's a great idea.
So we're going to push our mayor?
Well, yeah, there was I don't know what the current percentage is, but I bet it's pretty close. There was a time when 80% of the land in downtown Los Angeles was devoted to parking cars.
Right.
It's probably come down a bit, but it's still very, very high. So if you can figure out a way to put that land to more productive and exciting and beneficial uses than parking cars, that's a good thing for the cities. Yep. So I have never heard the idea about buying Uber vouchers. That sounds like a good one to me.
Great, great, great. So that we have a little bit of time for question, let's go into, final question is, what do you see the future of LA in 10 years? How is this city going to be different than it is today? And is it going to be? And what role are the three of you going to play in that? Bob, go ahead. You seem to be the lead.
We've talked about one of the issues. I think the driverless car with the Uber-type technology is going to significantly change how people move around in the city. It will we will still need expanded metro because our population will continue to grow, but the freeway system will become much more efficient with the driverless car. So that's going to change LA a lot and provide new opportunities, as we discussed, converting unnecessary parking facilities. The Metro Rail down Wilshire to Brentwood is a big, big deal for the city, and that will change when you are next here for an Urban Land Institute fall meeting. That will change how people move around and create new opportunities for development along that line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rob, what comes to mind when you ask that question is what the American Institute of Architects did in 1990, I believe it was, which was to send out a survey to its members, a list of trends, and ask them to rate those trends. And the number one trend was the urbanization of suburbia. And I think the answer is that's going to continue here. We were a little late coming to that game,
Right.
But we're here. We've arrived, and we realize that urbanization is probably our future, and that's where opportunities lie.
Yeah, and I would just add, I took a walk from LA Live on 11th Street down to Broadway and then back on 12th Street and counted 14 active projects, mostly housing. And I think we're going to see a better housing and jobs balance in downtown. I'm seeing South Park as an amazing example of a new urban neighborhood that's going to have an incredible density. We'll have great access through the transit system. And I'm very optimistic about the future of downtown to support more residential uses and balance the oversupply of jobs we have today.
Yeah, I think with the urban, they say one of the biggest issues confronting the aging today is loneliness. And that loneliness comes out of living in single-family homes by yourself. How do we solve that? I mean, that just seems crazy.
I was actually in thinking about this panel, I thought about that a natural area for growth of our mixed-use projects is senior housing, because they, like the young, will benefit from the walk to communities.
Yep.
So I think there's a whole market there that we haven't met in our mixed-use projects, that we need to challenge ourselves on how to do it and how to make it affordable to the senior citizens.
And to mix the elderly into the...
Oh, and mixing is great.
That's critical.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I think Westfield has said that they've recognized the underutilization of their malls, and they're looking at residential towers in most of them,
Yeah.
in particular in Century City.
That could be an opportunity for some of the B malls that will no longer be successful retail centers to convert to mixed-use projects, including senior housing.
Right, right.
What comes to mind is a book I enjoyed, The Crabgrass Frontier, The History of Suburbia and a Suburban Life in America. And at the end of the book, the author wrote, there is nothing as lonely as a suburban street on a hot summer day. And it does tell you that is a lonely place, or can be.
Right.
If you're not in the stage of life where the kids are playing soccer and sports and that kind of thing, yeah, it's time for a change. Come back to the city and be a part of the city and reconnect. I think that's an opportunity for the city to provide that service.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because we have so many renters and people that aren't buying. And the question is, will that increase the level of mobility and cause more people to come back to the urban environment after they've had their children?
My wife and I met a lady in New York City one evening who had just moved into the city from the suburbs. She was raised her family about 45 minutes north of the city. And after her husband passed away and her children were raised, she said, I came to Manhattan. And she said, I adopted some rules. I never had coffee in my kitchen. I always went out for coffee every morning. I rode buses. I used public transit. I joined a tennis club. I did everything I could to connect with the city. And we met her one evening at a performance of Hamilton. And she told us how she managed to find a way to get a ticket to Hamilton. It was her third time that she'd been there. And the city was a lifeblood for her. It was a new life for her.
That's great. So any questions from the audience? I can't see anything, so I think there's mics. I see a hand up, so. How did she manage to get a ticket to Hamilton?
She told us that at every performance, there are tickets that come available because someone misses an airplane, someone gets sick, someone does some circumstance takes place. And so there's a line at the theater to pick up those tickets. And then she told us there's now an app in New York City that you can get on, which is an app that says, I'll stand for you. So she could get somebody to stand in that line for her to get a ticket that evening.
See, you didn't think Wayne would have an answer to that, but I knew he would.
So Wayne, I have a question for you. The Oliot building, am I saying that?
Yeah.
Oviatt.
Oviatt, yeah.
Oviatt. So that is such a amazing, special place. So how has the evolution of what you've been doing in that particular space over time?
Well, thank you for asking. I've sold that building 1985, I think it was. But we did develop it, and it was the first, among the very first historic buildings in downtown Los Angeles. That's where we learned that history is a wonderful way of marketing a property. It was again, it was a very inexpensive purchase of the property. I think we paid about $5 or $6 a square foot for a building that was going to be torn down. And we said, let's save it and let's keep it. And it worked out very well for us. It's still standing there. It's been through several owners since. But it was an opportunity for us to get our company off the ground and get it rolling. So worked out well.
So unfortunately, our time's up. So what I do want to do is say thank you so much to the three of you. This city would not be the city that it is today without the three of you. You've done wonderful things. Keep doing it. Let's make this the best damn city in the world, right?
You got it.
So thank you so much.